I wanted to very quickly talk about correlation coefficients because I know that there's been a little bit of confusion with this. So, the correlation coefficient tells us two things. It tells us the strength and the direction of the relationship between two variables. So the correlation coefficient will be a value that ranges from -1 to +1. And since perfect correlations are incredibly rare, then it's likely that when you encounter a correlation coefficient, it will be a decimal value. Now, in terms of strength of the relationship between two variables, we evaluate the correlation coefficient in terms of absolute value to determine strength. So that means that a positive correlation of 0.90 and a negative correlation of -0.90 will indicate the same degree of strength of the relationship between two variables. So we're looking at absolute value when determining strength, and so the positive and negative sign don't matter. So what does the positive and negative sign tell us? What do we mean when we say a positive correlation or a negative correlation? So this tells us the direction of the relationship between these two variables. So with a positive correlation, a lot of times people evaluate these terms sort of like positive is good or positive is increasing. Think of positive correlation as the two variables are moving together. So either they are increasing together or they are decreasing together. They're moving in the same direction. So for instance, height and weight are often positively correlated. The taller you are, the more you weigh. So a professional basketball player, Shaquille O'Neal, should weigh more than me, does weigh more than me, I would really hope. So they're both moving together. And you could say the same thing, that the shorter you are, the less you weigh. So either they're moving up or down, but they're moving together. So if you see here on the left, this would indicate a positive correlation. So we have one variable on our x-axis, we have one variable on our y-axis, and they are moving together. So as amount of television watched increases, aggression is increasing as well. Negative correlation, this means that they're moving in opposite directions. So as one increases, the other decreases. So they're moving away from each other. So think positive moving together, negative moving away. So here we see the opposite. This would be an instance when, as the amount of television increases, aggression is decreasing. So maybe people are spending so much time watching television, they don't have time to go out and behave aggressively. So a student came in to the office and I was trying to think of an example, and I thought of, well, okay, the more beer you drink, the worse your driving skills are going to be, we would expect. Right? So as one is increasing consumption of alcoholic beverages, the other is decreasing driving skills. Now, keep in mind, you need to think carefully about how the variables are defined as to whether to expect a positive or negative correlation. If we defined here our variable of driving in terms of the amount of errors made or the amount of times that someone swerved out of their lane, then we might expect a positive correlation between the amount of alcohol consumed and the amount of driving errors or the amount of times that someone swerved out of their lane. So kind of think carefully about how the variables are defined in the context of that particular study, and keep in mind whether in the results they are indicating that there's a positive correlation or a negative correlation between those variables, and that should tell you something about how those variables are moving in relation to one another. If you see here in the middle, this would be no correlation. So there's essentially no pattern to this scatter plot. So we are saying that the amount of television watched here has no relationship with the amount of aggressive behavior that was observed. And essentially, we'll kind of talk about predicting one variable from another. So essentially, we're saying that we can't predict someone's aggression based on knowing how much television they watch. Right? So if you told me how much television you watch, with this data, I would have no indication as to how aggressive you may be.